So for those of you that I haven't met or don't know me, my name is Jessica Hildebrand. I'm a proud member of the Cherokee Nation. Together, let us acknowledge that this Native Empowerment meeting is taking place throughout the unceded territory of California, which is home to nearly 200 tribal nations. As we begin this meeting, we acknowledge and honor the original inhabitants of our various regions. The land I'm on today from my home is in Placer County, the traditional and ancestral homelands of the Nisenan people. We recognize and we thank the Nisenan people and the Native American tribes throughout California as the original stewards of this land. Wado, thank you.
Thank you, Jessica. So as I mentioned before, let me just go really quickly. Today, our goals that we have is sort of obviously what the work that we have done as far as this, as Jessica mentioned, our fourth session, as far as these empowerment series, and the hope was sort of like create a virtual space where families can log in virtually via Zoom and sort of go into some of the work that we've been doing as far as the needs of supporting both educationally and culturally our Native American students and families. We will give an update as far as the work that we have done as far as with the grant application, and some of the work that is around the Indian Parent Committee and how that's going to be crucial for the next steps for part 2 of the grant application that we're hoping to submit by the end of May. And then we have Professor Jesus Valle from American River College. And with closing thoughts and especially with recruitment and scheduling times and dates for the following sessions, which will be crucial as far as with the program development and many of the aspects that is part of the grant application for part 2. So one of the things that we'll do is provide an update as far as when it comes to the grant application, and this is something more than that Tiffany and Jessica can talk about, especially since they've attended many of the webinars, what that consists of. And so I would say, Tiffany, would you like to start as far as giving up as far as with the updates and what we need to know?
Yes. You're going to click through for me. Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Go to the next slide.
Or I'll be the backup in case.
Okay. So good evening. So in our last empowerment meeting, we talked about the deadline for the 506 form, which is a form that is required from the federal government for this grant to get funded by this grant. So we sent the form to all of our families that self-identify as Native in the demographic field. So whether you put Native as your primary ethnicity or it was a secondary ethnicity, we had over 1,000 families have that self-identifier. So we sent the 506 form electronically, and we also mailed it home with return envelopes to all 1,000 families. So we sent that via text and email, as we mentioned. We also created a Native Ed email to send those back electronically. You could scan them to us, text them by your phone. Any way possible, we are accepting them. So the forms were, the deadline for the 506 forms and part 1 of the grant was March 11th. And so out of the 1,000 forms that we mailed, text home, we received 42 completed forms back. And based on the count number of 42, we are awaiting an award notification. The minimum amount of the grant awarded is about $4,000. We're not sure how much we will get, but we should be informed within the next few weeks, I would imagine.
And then Tiffany, you said when you did this, was it about a year ago or 2 years ago when you submitted? When you mentioned it was around 15 people, right?
Yeah. So in my efforts 3 years ago, yes, my efforts, I got 15 forms back about 3 years ago, and they did award I think $3,500. So I'm hoping that it's at least double this time. We got more than double the forms. So I'm keeping positive that we have, a nice award amount.
And the reason why I asked Tiffany to share this information is since she's really well familiar with the process of submitting and sending out these 506 forms 3 years ago and also currently for this time around as well.
Yeah, so the deadline for the forms is that federal deadline. And I know that we have been receiving a handful of forms past the deadline. And that's something that we will work out with the team in student services to cover all students that have submitted a form. The forms that can't come in past the deadline, it just doesn't contribute to the total count. So the award amount will be based on 42. If we end up with 50 forms or 50 students that qualify for the program, we definitely want to service all 50 students. If that makes sense.
I have a question. Are the 506 forms in like any of the packets at the beginning of the school year, or enrollment packets or anything like that?
Sorry, Edberto is controlling it. I thought I was. That's a very good question. I think going forward, we'll probably, so we're going for a 3-year grant application cycle. And I don't know that they collect forms every year. So that's something that we will definitely look into because it'd be very convenient to send those forms home with the packet at the beginning of the year. I think that would be something that we would want to improve on, and definitely something that we would look to do.
I just have a clarification. They do allow, I know every year, even if it's a multi-year grant, every year you have the ability to submit a new student count.
Oh, okay. And okay, thank you, Christina. That's helpful to know. So
And I know in other districts it is in your enrollment packet or in your paperwork at the beginning of the year, like for Elk Grove.
Yes.
My kids, it's always been in their packets.
Yeah. It would be helpful to get it out ahead of time in front. Definitely. We'll work on that process going forward. So thank you for that.
Just so you know, as a parent, and my kids have been with the district since I think 2013, it's been like every other year, and I don't get it until after they get my child's demographic information at the start of the year. So when I turn in the emergency card and everything, maybe within 2 months I get the form, but it's not consistent. It's not every year.
And are you speaking to Twin Rivers?
Yes, this is Maria
Okay.
Elena. Yes, I'm speaking to
Okay.
Twin Rivers.
Got it. Okay. Yeah, we'll definitely tighten up those processes for sure. Now that there's a dedicated team working on this, we want to be effective and efficient and have consistency. So thank you for all these suggestions. Sorry, I'm doing.
Thank you very much also for the feedback too, as far as gathering the 506 forms. As far as for us, this is something that is new. As far as trying to submit it to a list of students and families that are self-identified. And we want to learn from many of our neighboring school districts as far as how they engage with their families as well. And this is something that we definitely, but I think will help when it comes to recruitment and increasing program here within Twin Rivers.
Yes, thank you.
If we don't have any more questions, I think I'd like to proceed to the next slide.
Good. Okay. Oh, this is the next slide. Okay, so part 2 is going to be opening up April 5th. So right after spring break, and it will close around mid-May if I don't have the timelines in front of me. I think that's on the next slide. So what part 2 is based on the student count that we submitted in the award that was awarded, or the funding that was awarded, it comes program development. And part of that program development, the integral part is the Indian Parent Committee that we need to form and be meeting ASAP, like yesterday. So parent and family members of eligible children enrolled in Twin Rivers are on the IPC, teachers in our schools, representative of Indian tribes located within 50 miles of any of our schools, if appropriate, high school aged Indian students, So I'm talking about members of the ICP are here. And then more than 1/2 total number of the IPC must be parent and family members of eligible Indian children. So we have a lot of community support and involvement, but we will also want to make sure that we have a large representation of our family members on the IPC. And the IPC serves as an advisory capacity and consults with Twin Rivers. So Jessica Edberto and Rudy and myself on the development and operation of the grant application. The IPC will sign off and approve whatever program development that we collaborate on and develop together. And so this committee of our family members and our community members is going to be a very integral part in part 2 of this grant. Next slide.
Tiffany. I just wanted to mention really quick that Maria Elena, one of our participants this evening, contributed to the flyer that you see featured on the slide. And so she made that creative contribution. And this was one of the flyers we sent out. So thank you for that, Maria. And I also wanted to mention that digging more into the process of developing a program within the school district, it was discovered that teachers within Twin Rivers can be part of the IPC. And I actually have said at several previous Native empowerment meetings that I won't be a part of the IPC because my child doesn't go to Twin Rivers, but it looks like there may be an opportunity for me and other Twin River teachers. The previous Indian parent community that I was a part of was in Placer County, and it was a collective. So it was different than a district development approach. So it was slightly different. So anyways, it's new information, and I just want to clarify with the group, because I've said that a few different times, like I won't be able to be part of it, and I want to see this program through. So anyways, I'm just clarifying for the participants here tonight. Thank you, Tiffany.
Oh, no, thank you. And I'm very excited to have you a part of it, because you will bring a unique perspective of a classroom teacher to that group, and a Native. Okay.
When are you looking to create this group, and like how do we get people on it? Because I'm thinking too with the 506 form and just being part of the Native community, and sometimes like we're all bombarded with all this stuff, right? So I didn't get the 506 form. I didn't return it. I'm a whole professor, and I didn't do the thing I was supposed to do, let alone other families. So knowing like our community and like we got to be reached out to. Like I know we need more like care in that way, being like, hey, where's your form? So I mean, I would really like to participate in this and be more, participate active. So.
Yes, Vanessa, Dr. Escovedo. I would love it. It's going to be led by our parents. And so it needed to start like yesterday. So as soon as this meeting concludes, we'll reach out to folks and see when you want to meet, because you can meet as frequent as you like. You determine the frequency of the meetings and how long you meet. And we need a parent leader. So if you would like to volunteer for that. No pressure. But just to echo some of those sentiments that you're saying, I understand that is a need for more follow-up with our families, and not just the robocalls and not just the electronic notifications, but actually picking up the phone and doing reminders. So that could be an integral part of the IPC, as well as reaching out to the community. So
also, if we have like a Facebook group for the Indian Ed program, that's a great way. Like Snack can share it, or like the other Native Eds have pages, I know.
Okay, that's
so
great.
If they could share it, or like Wilton or something, then it would get out to more people that we are doing this now in our district.
That's a really good idea. And it's like you always know where to go for more information on that. So
Absolutely. I would definitely agree with that. Thank you for the suggestions, and also sharing your willingness to be a part of the committee. I do want to say that we had some suggestions to potentially make like a kind of like an old school phone tree, to where we given permission by each person, we would willingly kind of share our information into like a phone bank with the idea that, we could possibly share that amongst, Native families to create a communication tree if needed. I was more concerned that there may be certain families that we aren't reaching even digitally, just, the digital continuum, anyway, so that's something that we can also, maybe consider as the IPC, different avenues to communicate. So thank you for that.
No, that's a great suggestion. Thank you. Okay. This is a slide you created, Edberto. Do you want to explain it?
Yes, so this is sort of just what the work that the IPC would be doing in the grant development, focusing primarily on 4 different parts. One of those obviously is developing what kind of services or programs would be part of that, whether it be tutoring or mentoring services. Part of that grant that we will receive, the allotment, when we receive the notification, as far as some of the PD or services that would be training that would be offered for, in this case, for our teachers or our educators. It could be, trainings on cultural competency or just the work that is being done within our schools and our district. And the way that we are developing the budget we receive, obviously, as far as what services will be provided for how much, and your input would be part of that. And obviously the fact of working, collaborating with many of the local tribes within this. So these are part of these are part of the categories that fall within this section of the budget or the grant or the part 2 application. So those are just some of the what that would encompass of the work that we would be doing.
Okay, here are those timelines that I was mentioning earlier. So part 2 opens up April 5th, and that just means that's the earliest you could submit it if you've done everything, I imagine. And then the final deadline is Friday, May 14th. So we really want to, this is why we need to get the committee up and running. So we can have those meaningful conversations, so we can work on the program development and what we want for our Native students, and then bring it together, collaborate, and then formulate our Native Ed program. And once we do develop that, the IPC will review it in collaboration with student services, and then we will submit it. And so, yes, go ahead.
Oh, no, sorry. I was just saying, I think probably the work that as far as when it came to the part 1, we wanted to ensure that we received all of the Title VI forms. So we didn't submit the grant application for part 1 until the day of, which was that Wednesday. And I think probably in many of these cases, we will probably wait until maybe that Friday morning to make sure, or Thursday morning or Thursday afternoon to make sure that we have all the information and the documents ready to submit part 2 for the grant.
Yeah, we want to, take as much time and be thoughtful and, and do this part right. So the next steps are just reaching out to our families to see who wants to be involved in the IPC. It's going to be a smaller, intimate committee of the folks I mentioned earlier. And we really want our families to be the integral part in this program development, telling us what the needs are and what you would like to see for your students, and just working together. So that is part 2.
And what I would say is when we did the needs assessment at the beginning, and some families had expressed the interest in being part of the Indian Parent Committee. We will send out another invitation if any other individuals are interested. But definitely we appreciate some of the folks that have mentioned they want to be part of it just from today. And, I guess some of the questions that we will have is as far as like what time works, how often do you think, or me ask in this case, like with Christina, and I think I saw Josh here on this call, or other people who have been part of this. Like, how often do you think would you recommend as far as meeting together, and as far as having, a true in the development of this, of the grant development for the program development.
Our parent committee, their bylaws, they meet every fourth Thursday of the month, and they meet August through May. May would be their last meeting, and then they resume again when the new school year starts. And they don't meet in December because there's just so much going on with the breaks and stuff, and then they come back again in January.
Is it like an hour-long meeting, Christina?
When we're in person, it kind of turns into like a potluck type event. So it's more like community-ish
Okay.
style. And so those meetings, sometimes depending on what's on the agenda, can go to 2 hours. But since we've been in COVID and Zoom and all that, we meet for an hour. We try to keep it to an hour.
Thank you for that information, Christina. And I just was jumping in. I don't know if Josh wanted to share anything, but if so, feel free. But I was curious, when some of the neighboring districts native program have, hey, Josh, there you are. Hi.
I can't see my face. Can you see me?
You're on the wrong box.
I'm sorry. I was trying to get my my phone to unmute and it wouldn't work. So, but we meet on Thursdays, second Thursday of every other month. So we meet 4 times a year, and then we do our subcommittees from there as far as like planning graduations or events, and so that's our schedule for the year.
And when you are in person, is it more of the potluck style or?
No, in person, when we meet in person, it's just a strict like 1 hour meeting. Like we meet at 5, right when we get off in the building, we get a room in the building, and then the 7 or 8 parents show up, or 9 parents. I think we have 11 members now this year. They all show up, and we all like to get out of there right at 6 if we can. But then, like I said, if we need more time, we develop subcommittees, and we meet other times and discuss things further.
Thank you.
Thank you, Josh. My question is that, because I've sat in on most of the district meetings, I've tried to join and to observe so I can better understand. But are those smaller details determined more within like the bylaws, or is that larger framework?
I believe those are in our bylaws as far as when we meet and how often. Is that what you're asking?
Yeah, that was what I was asking.
How many people need to be voted members on representative to get the quorum to actually have a meeting and vote on certain topics? Nights we don't have a quorum and only certain family members show up, or maybe a couple voted on members with community members. We'll just discuss whatever as we can, but we're not allowed to vote without the proper amount of nominated representatives present.
Quorum, yeah. Okay, good to know, Josh. I appreciate it. And I want to see that Alicia Canning shared the framework for the bylaws and such, so we can at least defer to some kind of already established direction. So that's really helpful. So thank you.
Yeah, and then also we vote our members on in Oak Grove. I don't know if that's what all the other districts do, but in Oak Grove, the members of the parent committee, we take in nominations. The community nominates who they want to be representative of them, and then we send it back out. Everybody who got nominated goes on a ballot, and then we collect votes, and then our community, our families, everybody who turned in a 506 form gets a chance to opportunity to vote for who they want to represent them at that table, and that's how we form our parent committee.
Oh, interesting. So do you, last question, or for me, is there a certain amount of slots available, or is that what you?
Yes, there's a certain amount of slots, and then I believe 2 years for the positions.
Got it.
And then every 2 years you get you're off, and then you can get re-nominated if you want, or you can nominate yourself, and it just kind of goes on and on like that. And so that's kind of that's how we do it, and it seems to work out as far as people being displeased, I guess, about the results, because everybody gets an opportunity to vote, you know, and not, so anyways. But yeah, we're willing to help. Any more information we can give you, Jessica, we're always happy to do that.
Thank you, Josh. And then just to clarify, one last piece is, you know, just kind of future tripping on it. When we have, you know, different people for the roles, you know, the chair, et cetera, those roles can be filled, but then it's still a public meeting, correct? Where parents can join and
Yes,
be
anybody.
part of the public meeting.
Yeah, anybody attends our meetings, anybody who wants to, but to get a vote, you have to be voted on by the community. Otherwise, you just don't get to vote on it. The issue, you know, you have to kind of, yeah, you can share your ideas and put your input in, attend the meetings, but you just don't get a vote.
Okay, okay. Very helpful, Josh. Thank you so much. Really appreciate it. Thank you so much, Christina. Is there any questions, or does anyone else have any feedback that they want to share with us that, you know, is somewhat related that they think would be helpful before we move on?
How much interest have you had with it? I mean, have people been reaching out saying that they wanted to be a part of this? I mean, has it really just been part of this group? I don't know, like what else has been out?
Question, as a matter of fact. And Heriberto and Tiffany, jump in if you want, but I feel like we've been garnering interest through these meetings, the empowerment meetings, which have been, even though we've, you know, I mean, we've calendared them, but they have been somewhat impacted by the, you know, just the ever-changing conditions of the pandemic. I would just want to mention that. But I believe we have an interest form, and at every empowerment meeting, I feel as though we've had multiple parents share verbal interest, some in the chat. Would you agree with that, Tiffany and Heriberto?
Yeah, we did that needs assessment early on, and we have those answers recorded. And one of the questions was, would you be interested in being on an Indian parent committee? And there was a handful of responses. I wouldn't have an exact number, but we will have a group close to Josh's group of, you know, at least 10 that are interested in being in a smaller, more intimate IPC. And then we just keep building from there.
I think it's important that we get out what the program could be to get more interest. Like my kids in Elk Grove get culture classes every week. There's fatherhood groups every week. There's tutoring for those kids if they're falling behind. And once people realize like we could be there, you know, if we get enough participation and get this grant where, you know, we can have the funds to do those type of things, then we would get more people. But when we're just asking for a form and they're not really understanding the big picture of what a Native Ed program can be, then we're not getting as much buy-in as we could get.
Yeah, you're exactly right. It's like this, what is it? I don't know what this is. What is it? How's it going to benefit me and my child? I totally understand. And so I think, yes, part of the goal of creating this space for our Native families was kind of to share that information. But again, with various technology, it's late in the afternoon. There's so much going on with the pandemic. And we hope through word of mouth with you all that are joining us and along with our efforts that folks will slowly but surely come around and want to be a part of this. So I hear you. I totally agree.
Yeah, and know that, Julia, like, I hear you 100%. And we did, like, so a year ago when me and Tiffany and I, we were working on this, right? And our thought was that in fall, you know, the 15-day shutdown way back a year ago wouldn't have lasted a year, right? No one knew this. So we were talking about having an introductory fall in-person gathering for Twin Rivers families and kind of like a kickoff. Well, that didn't really happen, but we've really tried with the empowerment meetings, but I absolutely hear the need for the information sharing and recruiting, because I want the families to have an equitable chance to participate. And if they haven't even heard about it, or they don't even know, you know, if they're not aware of it, then they don't have an equitable chance to participate. So we do hear what you're saying, and we'll do some debriefing and take some action to help target these needs that are being shared, because I agree. And we definitely hear you. So anyone else? Really good feedback.
I think we should proceed on, and so can you please introduce Professor Valle, and then we could, if there's any questions, I think those we could do at the end.
Yes. Thank you, Heriberto. And so without further ado, I want to introduce a special guest we have this evening, who is leading a discussion for Native Voices, the director for the Native American Resource Center at Los Rios Community College, Professor Jesus Valle.
Hey there, folks. I want to say, good evening to you kind relatives at this point. And, thank you. I want to greet you in my language, Leo Senchin Chanyabu, Kechimalea, Haisiwa, and Yoemia, and greet you like that in a good way. I'm Professor Jesus Valle. I teach English at American River College, and I direct our Native American Resource Center. And I'm Apache Isleta Carrizo Yaqui. I'm enrolled in my Yaqui band. And I was taking notes, along the way, just listening to everyone here. And I just want to congratulate you all on such amazing progress and such tremendous work that's already been done. To this point, it's looking pretty good. It's exciting. And I like to see that, around in this region, because I know the kids are going to benefit in the long run. And so, I've been in conversation with Jessica about this group and kind of what it's doing, and have a lot of thoughts about it too. And I appreciate being able to share those thoughts. And so I'm also, I've been the acting chair of the Native Parent Committee out here in Davis. And we started our program about 3 years ago. And I want to talk a little bit about that journey and some of the things that we learned. But, first and foremost, I want to, also acknowledge Christina Prairie Chicken had a large role in helping get us off the ground out in Davis. And I don't know if I ever really had a chance like this in a public forum to thank her, but I really do appreciate it, because, now our program is standing up and doing pretty good. And others who had input into it, wasn't just her. Monica Shields helped out quite a bit. But I also want to say, I know a lot of the people here in the call, and I know y'all really fantastic community folks, community leaders, people who've done a lot of amazing things. But I'm going to invite you, kind of just for this space, I guess, at least, to step away from, because I know in the community we hold all these different roles. We wear a lot of different hats, and professor here, and then program leader here, and then Native Parent Committee leader here. And I kind of talk about myself. It's like right? It's pretty intense. It can be very intense. So I kind of want to invite everyone here just to meet, first at the level of human beings, and also at the level of parents. And so to set aside those other roles and places and spaces and hats that you wear, and just kind of step. I know I have 3 children. My son is 14, and my daughter is 12. My other daughter is 10. And I know that there's a whole parent brain somewhere in my head that is just like constantly thinking about my children and their well-being and their welfare as little Native people on this planet. So, I'm going to talk about the Davis journey, and then I'm going to kind of go into screen share here a bit and show you some things and share some things. And I'm going to kind of get a little bit personal with it. I'm going to invite you also to think, reflectively during the space of time. I know we don't have a whole lot of time, just a little bit of time. But I want to encourage you, when you're thinking about your program structure and formation, really what you're doing is you're building a community and you're building relationships. And you always have to come back to that. You're not so much as building a program, is you're building a community and a safe space for your children and for yourselves within a system that is simply not designed for us. It's designed opposite of us. And that's the big challenge here. I encourage you all to consider, to think about, broadening the program. How we happen to structure it in Davis as outgrowth of our journey was that we have a broad Native student support program. And underneath that umbrella is the Title VI program, but it's not only a Title VI program. And we were able to get the district to commit to matching the funds that came in through the Title VI. So we reach out to all our 200 Native American students and families and invite all of them into the circle. And, you know, we have, for instance, we have like a Canadian Native folks who wouldn't qualify underneath the 506 form, for instance. And we have folks from Mexico and other places in the Americas who are strongly indigenous and speak their languages, identify with their community. So we include everyone, and the district is supporting all the Native students together, matching the funds that come in from the Title VI. So our capacity to actually serve all of the families is that much deeper. And I would encourage you to think, because if I'm not mistaken, the Twin Rivers community is very tribally diverse, right? And there's a long history there. And there's a lot of folks who've been working already in the community for a long time that also need to be part of that conversation, you know, of relationship. It's all about positive relationship. So to make a very long story short, 3 years ago in Davis, we started getting together, you know, just as families at the parks to let our kids play, because our kids needed community. There was nothing here, there was no connection. And, you know, to put it bluntly, my children, my personal children, my son was experiencing tremendous racism in one of the schools, tremendous racism. And part of that was that the consultants that the district was bringing in were layering on and really piling on lies about Native people. And so I emailed the district and I said, this has to stop. There are real Native people here, and these real Native people, right, have a voice and a say, and we're not going to tolerate this. And that got the ball rolling. And so I'm going to share with you a graphic that I had put together. I kind of was sharing it with Woodland. Woodland has an emerging program. A lot of this, obviously, lots of you in the room are experts on all of this. And I don't intend this to be a linear process. What I was telling Woodland is that this is really, you take here, right, in the ways that it applies to you and supports you, and that you can use. And it doesn't have to be in a linear process, but involving the board is a good idea to have political advocacy at that level. Getting the parents, right, the broad umbrella of parents. And I'll talk a little bit about enfranchisement in a little bit and what that looks like, but we just went through a process of enfranchisement for our whole Native group. We've done data gathering, disaggregated data gathering, just for our Native students in terms of, you know, test results, performance metrics, disaggregated by gender, disaggregated by year, so that we can see trends. You have to pay attention to LCAP and the role that LCAP plays relative to the program and the planning, and you have to leverage that money. I'm all about money within the system. If there's money in the system, we need to get our hands on it. You need to plan out the program in a way that is sustainable. There has to be clear communication so people can apply, and we send out applications to not only the Title VI 506, but just intake forms for the whole Native Student Support Program. Then the implementation, it's important that, you know, a Native person is hired as a coordinator. We were lucky to get Monica Scheel. She works currently at San Juan, but she does double duty with us, so she's employed by both districts. And then program evaluation, we feel is really important, that there is some sort of reflective cycle, and that we're looking at hard numbers and hard data. And so within that graphic, there's a lot, you know, there's a lot to think about. But, you know, when thinking about enfranchisement, that means that there's a very important group in this room right now, and you all are the startup group, right? And startup group is a great place. It's a great place to be. It took us 3 years for the startup group to fire ourselves, right? we had to kind of let go of the pieces that kept us in startup mode, and then move on to something that was a little firmer. But Twin Rivers, like I said, you guys are kind of ahead, and you have some really, you know, you have folks with lots of experience in the room. But in thinking about your parental roles, it could be that if you're going to work in another place and putting lots of love and energy and support into that program, it may be that you want to come home to Twin Rivers for self-care and for that love and support to be provided to you. So I'm just, that's kind of how I see it. The community, we all take turns taking care of each other. You know, it occurred to me to pull this up while you all were talking. you know, what we did is we put together an evolving list of core values. And we did this several times because our evolving list of core values changed, but we realized that even before, you know, bylaws, even before we got to many of those steps, we had to form relationship about the values. And so like one of our guiding values, our primary one, is we want to keep the interest of the Native children front and center. And that's Native children writ large, right? We wanted to preserve tradition and indigeneity. We want Native kids have a place to have pride, dignity, and celebration. We want our program to have teeth. We want to address real issues of racism and discrimination in DJUSD. We're an advocacy group as well. We want to maintain Indigenous values. We want to have harmony, respect, pleasant, supportive environment, communication. We want to enfranchise the whole group. We want everyone's voices represented. We want transparency. We want the minority opinion in a decision to be respected. And then we're also really pushing for restorative justice. And I'll give you some traditional mediation for conflict resolution, Indigenous-based problem solving. So, for instance, one of the structural changes that we're trying to affect in the district is that when Native children are, you know, sent for discipline, whether that's low level or a higher level, such as suspension or expulsion, detention, we want the advocate, the Native advocate, right, the coordinator of the program, to be immediately flagged and looped into that, so that we can have tribally based interventions to kind of support that Native family with whatever has happened to be going on with the child, because it's a holistic idea, and it's also restorative and tribal to look at what's happening with the heart of that child, not just we're gonna, you know, expel them. I was gonna share this to you too, just in the vein of, you know, data gathering, and lots of you in the group. Nope, that's not the one. Nope, not the one. That's the one. A couple years ago, and there's a lot of names that you'll recognize here within the contribution list: Christina Prairie Chicken, Vanessa Escovedo, Crystal Martinez, and others. We put together an entire article just about suspensions and expulsions. This did a deep dive into the state of suspensions and expulsions in California. This was also with Dr. Luke Wood. And it gives a lot of important background, and I'm just going to gloss through this because I'm moving really fast, and facts and figures, but we know that our children are disproportionately impacted and targeted for discipline within the system. And so this also kind of fed into the motivation for getting the Davis program off the ground, because there's an urgent need. There are also recommendations featured there at the end of the document. I can share that with all of you folks. It's easy to put into. In fact, I'll just put it into the chat right now. So data gathering is super important. Setting up the program so that it is going to keep running without any single person in this Zoom, right, being present. It has to be institutionalized. Your number one goal should be institutionalizing this. How do you make the system work for us in a way that it's going to serve your great and great-great-grandchildren and the great-grandchildren of others, right? Because if we do that, then we know we're really doing something right. So I've said quite a bit here, but I want to kind of pivot a little bit now to you all to kind of, you know, try to get some of your voices involved as parents, to get some critical thinking about what it is that your experiences have been, right? And I was telling the group here when I first joined the Zoom that, you know, it's about building trust and relationship between all of you folks here in the community who are doing this work together. And that one of those, the shared space where we intersect, is that the system has oppressed us and traumatized us, and that we need to actually be able to trust each other enough to share those traumatizing experiences, what has actually happened, so that we can start to hold the system accountable. Because if we don't, the system will keep doing its thing, and we'll still get the outcomes for our kids that we're seeing. And so since our last parent group meeting that we just had, Kate Snow and Monica Shield brought out all the disaggregated data for our Native kids. And let me tell you, it's hard to look at. It is very hard to look at, because you look at the impacts, all of the suspensions, all of the expulsions, the academic performance, right, lower than any other group in the area. And when we look at this, we specifically do not take a deficit approach. It is not that anything is wrong with our Native kids. Nothing is wrong with our children. They're beautiful. Creator gave them talents and gifts. Creator gave them ways of knowing, ways of expressing themselves. And the system keeps trying to shut them up and tamp them down. And so that's reflected in the data, how the system is failing the children. So I encourage you to pull that disaggregated data to further help the parent committee to form and shape the conversation. But at this time, I'd like to give you a few prompts and then to have you break out into groups of 3 in the breakout rooms for a very short period of time, introduce yourselves to each other, maybe in the breakout room, spend about, I don't know, Roberto, how many minutes do we have total for this part of the conversation?
I would say as much time as you would like, and as much time as individuals have as far as, being within the space as well.
I would say we take about 10 minutes, right? Maybe 10 to 11 minutes in the breakout rooms. That's about 3 or 4 minutes for each person. And here's the discussion. If you want to jot these down, here are the prompts. And so number 1 is, what have been your experiences? What have been your experiences? I'll put these in the chat. But you want to grab them because when you go to the breakout room, it goes away. What are your needs? And what do you want to see in a program? And by that, I mean, not only I want tutoring, the values, the ethos, the feel, the traditionalism, the nativeness, the indigeneity, right? All of those different portions of it that you really not just want, but that you really need to see. So again, what have been your experiences, right, so far? And by this, I mean your children's, by extension, your children's experiences in the classroom, things teachers have said to them, things that they've seen on the walls, things that they've encountered in the books, right? Things that you parent to parent have encountered, PTA meetings, or your interactions with the district. And I know we have district folks here, but we're going to talk about the district, right? That's what it has to come down to within, the Native Parent Committee. It's about elevating parent voices. This is a partnership between the parents, the district, and the tribes. 3-way partnership. So again, what have you been your experiences? What are your needs, right? And by needs, these aren't just cerebral, these are also spirit and heart-based needs. And then what you want to see in the program. And so we're ready for the breakouts. You can send them to the breakouts probably, let's say for 10, we'll start with 10 minutes. And then kind of, I wouldn't say jot down, but do jot down and think about those things that stand out to you in the conversation. Then we'll have kind of a share out when you get back. All right, we're ready to go. Is that going to close all the rooms or just ours? Let's go ahead and bring them all back. And you're muted.
Sorry about that. I think they're still deep in conversation, so that's probably.
Bring them back. Bring them back. That's the best place to bring them back. When they come back, get them all that hot. I think we're still missing one group, right? There they are.
I believe there's about 3 more people.
I bet that is Vanessa's group. She said she had a lot to talk about.
Well, let's start there. Vanessa, what were you saying?
So I was in a group with Sally and Jessica. And so we were talking about our experiences and kind of really pulling together and talking about how all the time, we feel like we're in this individual space where like we're fighting against something by ourselves. So like I'm fighting against the 2nd grade teacher, or I'm fighting against like the one school that my daughter's at because it's in front of me. And so we're talking about like how good it is to feel like we can build this community here and then also make huge change in that way of it not just being this individualized. Because I'm like, I'm wasting all my breath on one person, and it's just the one 2nd grade teacher that my daughter has instead of the other 3 2nd grader, blah, blah, blah. So, and then I'm talking about how Jessica's been working really hard to like, get this started, and hearing, the past of that, and Tiffany, trying to start this by herself, for 3-4 years ago. And just, I mean, look how awesome this whole group is, and I've been in community with some of these people for a very long time. And so, yeah, I'm just excited about it. I'll stop talking now.
Anybody else from that group want to add to that, share out? Remember, you're talking about your experiences, the needs, and what you want to see in the program. Let's hear from another group then. And we can always add in. You can always add to the conversation.
I'll go. I had mentioned that I had been working in education, and specifically with Native students, for like 15 years. And I feel like I've really developed skills and as an advocate and things like that, but how I didn't realize how hard it was going to hit when it was your own kids and how emotional of a process it was going to be. And so this year, and it started, and I didn't realize how young it was going to start. I have a TK student who he got a project, came back Thanksgiving week, and he the poem was, the Indians and the Pilgrims had a feast one day. They sat down at a table where a great big turkey lay. They passed the corn and passed the bread and passed the pumpkin pie. Then the Indians and the Pilgrims said, let's give peace a try. And the project was going to be, I think they were going to build make a Indian and a Pilgrim. And I was just so emotional that day. Like I had my husband look over the email, and usually in my work, my job, I would used to just email a teacher and be like, but like I just had because I was picturing my son sitting in the classroom and actually following through with this project, and what that was if that was gonna impact him, like what does he feel as a Lakota boy having to take part in this type of thing. And then my older son last year in kindergarten, his teacher was pretty receptive and I offered resources. But I think the California weekly studies, those things that come back every week, those things, I didn't realize I was going to have to counter, because he loves to read and he loves to learn. And he wanted to read what they said. So my husband and I would have to sit down with him and be like, this is what this says, but this isn't these aren't your founding fathers. This isn't, and there was presentations of like, when November came, Indian people and Pilgrims, and my husband was like, Indian people are not uncivilized. They're not savages. This isn't what they look like. You know what they look like. You know what your family looks like. That's how and so we, and I just wasn't prepared. And it's a lot of work to do that, as to be work every day and then have to come home and reteach some things. That was, and I'm sorry, I didn't mean to take too long, but that was kind of what I had shared in the other group.
Thank you, Christina, for kind of opening it up, a little bit deeper, like that. Does anyone
Thank you for
want-
sharing, girl. Like, it's like, oh, I feel it, I feel it so much.
Thank you, Christina.
I just want to add to Christina, like, I know you're just not alone in this, and I think that's going to be a really important part of the Parent Advisory Committee, is being able to allow our families, our mothers, our fathers, aunties, uncles, caregivers, to really share these stories, right, and share our experiences and come up with solutions and resolutions. So thank you for sharing, and just know it's appreciated, and you're not alone.
Yeah, that's really good. It's gonna take great determination working together to make it happen. As I mentioned earlier, it took us 3 years, and it was bumpy. Like our parent group, we didn't agree, on some things, and we had to figure out how to get through our own disagreements with each other, personality differences. It had to be real community building, and we're stronger for it, right? But there's definitely kind of this emotional part that can't be ignored to it. So I encourage you all to figure out early, how you're going to deal with conflict within just this group itself, but also how you're going to deal with all of the deeper kind of touchier things and be bold and brave with it. You know, we went over to my daughter's school, my daughter's school, when they were still in the middle school. And it was myself, Melinda Adams, Carol Standing Elk, and a couple of other people. We sat down with the history teachers. We're like, okay, look, we want to start this conversation about what you're teaching the kids. Very, very friendly, very collegial, very like teacher to teacher, like parent to teacher. Let's figure this out. And next thing you know, these teachers, one of whom was a person of color, were flat out telling us, no, they couldn't bring themselves to say the word genocide. They didn't believe that there was genocide. And that messed us up. We weren't ready for that. That re-traumatized us deeply, you know, and I think that we had to, that drew us together, right, as Native parents, but we had to process together, like how do we go about, as Christina was saying, like it can be exhausting trying to on your own, right? It's like whack-a-mole here, whack-a-mole there, but it's the circle together, right? A systematic approach. So let's keep hearing out from the groups a little bit. Anyone want to talk for our group? So we had Josh and Julia in our group.
I didn't speak in our group, but I do want to speak for a little bit now. I have a middle schooler. She's been in the district for 3 years. And the only time we've heard of Native history here in Sacramento, in the Sacramento region, Northern California region, has been in her social science class. And it's because she's had the same African-American professor or teacher for those 2 years. If not, she wouldn't be hearing about it. Her school's mascot is a pioneer, which I find very, very offensive and problematic. Their school colors are red and blue, and they're not allowed to wear them. So how are they supposed to build like campus pride, campus unity with things like this that are dividing our kids, but also ignoring their history? So
Thank you for sharing that. That's really valuable insight. And you know, you're in the circle right now. I know you mentioned that Maria Elena brought you along as a guest, but guess what? You're right. That's how we do things. All voices are important. I'm going to show you folks something because I want to complicate this just a little bit, but to bring to the forefront. I'm going to show you, and the images are disturbing. The images are actually really, really disturbing because I want to bring to the forefront that it's not just what you're seeing and what you're hearing from your children, but it's also the things that other kids are seeing and the things that your children are not seeing. And I know some of you had seen.
Oh, I think you went on mute.
Did I?
We can hear you now.
Oh, because I was trying to get into screen share, but I guess as soon as I click. And so, you know, these are kind of stereotypical images, kind of mascotted images of Native American folks. So my son started junior high, right? And right at the info night, we go and we're going to visit each classroom. And my mom said, can you go to it? I'm like, yeah, I can go. I'm going to each of his classrooms, going to junior high, finally getting in there. And I go to his, I guess it's like world studies or social studies classroom. And I walk in and it's full of parents and the teacher, full of parents and the teacher. And he has this big poster on the wall, children's map of the United States of America. Big poster, really large, whole like big on the back wall. And I'm standing there, I turn around, I look at it and I realize it has all these horrible caricatures, not only of Native folks, but of all kinds of folks. It's egregious. Like it's just absolutely egregious caricatures of Native people, Blackfeet people trying to wash the black off of their feet. And so I sent this out to the Native Parent Committee, and we immediately got working on this in cooperation with the principal. And you see, the principal has no power to tell the teachers what they can and cannot put in their classroom. So it's really about the parents, you as a parent and as emergent parent committee, getting into the classrooms and taking a look around and seeing what's on the walls and seeing what just random stuff that these teachers are putting into the classrooms that are damaging the psyche, the well-being, the spiritual health of our Native children in these spaces. And I'll give you one more example, and I'm going to let you go with that. But just recently, just a couple of weeks ago, Beth Rose messaged me and was like, hey, there's this presentation happening at the school, and it's this an avowed Anglophile anthropologist who's going to give a talk at the elementary school about Indiana Jones, his term, right? Indiana Jones style anthropology. He's so excited to dig up these sites in the Sierra. And so again, we got moving as a group and we shut that down. So there's the need for vigilance. There's the need for policing. And that's going to be part of this, is developing that kind of awareness, but fast communication with each other, because all of these voices together, that's why I say you got to broaden it to all Native people, because the bigger your group, the more political agency you're going to have, the more voice. All right, I'm going to open it up for about 2 more minutes of open discussion here, follow-up questions, and then I'm going to hand it back over to the facilitators.
So I work at Costco. Oh, sorry. I work at Costco, and that poster we sold at Costco. So I work at the Cal Expo Costco, and I had to take it to my manager and like, we can't sell this shit. And so I got it pulled off the floor. That's just one Costco out of 1,000 Costcos. But it's just like, you know, I can't believe they have it up in the classroom.
Did you follow up with corporate?
No, I'm busy.
No, I'm not accusing you. I'm just saying there's an opportunity.
Yeah, and it was just like, it was so, because I was stalking it. I'm a morning stalker, so I was stalking it, and I was like, what is this? And you know, of course, I'm like looking at it, and then just feeling like I started like progressively more mad throughout my shift, and then I pulled them all back to receiving, and I told my warehouse manager, I was like, no. I mean, and that's one thing, right? Shopping, but in the classroom, I'm supposed to be safe.
So we've made it clear to the district, anything Native or Native related, our committee needs to be involved. It needs to be vetted by us, right? And so there has to be kind of an agreement, you know, with the folks. That's why I say the board is important, right? These layers are important. The board, and then the vice superintendents, right? These are important folks to connect with and make relationship with.
So that was going to be my question, is like, where do we start looking to like develop a good relationship with the board? Because I'll tell you, my relationship with the board and the district is not great, but I know that it's important to have, and I know that it's important to have those relationships. And I'm really trying my hardest as a parent to maintain an open line of communication and try not to be too divisive. But you know, these are my kids, and that's kind of hard. And especially, you know, I'm not just advocating for my kids, I'm trying to advocate for the community's children.
I would say, you know, you really need relationships built one person, one conversation at a time. And it's a little harder because of this remote environment, but we started early on to meet with one of the board members and at the cafe, talk to him and just tell him our experiences, you know, relate. He was also a parent. So, you know, meeting in that parent space really kind of levels things out.
Jesus, were you finished with that comment?
Yeah.
I just wanted to piggyback on that, that I have reached out to all of the board members, the Twin Rivers, you know, upper echelon, and the board members, the board. And I did email them prior to our first empowerment meeting to warmly welcome them all. For those that I haven't informed already or don't remember, I am at the leadership at my local teachers association. I'm the minority at large. And so obviously, our president works closely with all the board members to foster buy-in for, various negotiation things and such. So I'd like to potentially, get a core group of parents that would be willing to go to the board with me to potentially have some conversation. So that's something that I'd like to do potentially. And it could be even more led by a parent with me, just part of that group, but helping to energize it. And then I also want to mention that hearing need, I'm an elected official at the regional level for the Sacramento Service Center, which is the CTA, the California Teachers Association. And I do have some jurisdiction and ability to provide professional development to teachers. And so I would like to explore this avenue. And so know that that's in the works too. And I hear that that's definitely a need. Vanessa shared a story about the art teacher misinforming some students, potentially accidentally, but still incorrect information. And so that helps to even reinforce some of the ideas I have about getting the PDs out for the teachers. So we'll see how that goes, but it's definitely being heard. The needs being heard. So.
I just had an idea as far as getting a hold of the board. I know that they just had the meeting yesterday to get a cultural diversity person. I think that might be an in to sit and meet with the board member and make sure that the Native community is going to be a thought in that person's head, whoever they hire. So that would be kind of like we're asking for a meeting pertaining to this recent agenda item, and then you could go from there.
Great idea.
That's a good idea. I have a couple of quick observations, and I'm going to stop talking completely and turn it back over. But there were folks in our group, and I'm not talking about you, Maria Elena, I'm just saying in general, there were folks in our group whose approach to the board was one of bitterness and hopelessness and anger. And the board members get yelled at all the time, and they just tune it out. They don't respond to that because they hear so much of it. But the way we got traction was by really kind of in two ways, meeting as a parent, but also meeting, this is where you got to get strategic politically and do a landscape analysis and think, okay, we have educators in the parent group, right? People like people who are like them. So we use that strategically, like maybe they'll listen to the Native educators, right? Because they weren't listening to the other Native parents who didn't have letters after their name. That's horrible. That's a horrible thing to do, but they tended more to listen to the folks who were teachers. So we leveraged that. But we also strategically protected our allies in the system. So you have to protect your allies, including the folks on this call who are employed by the district. You have to protect those folks. And so the Native parents not associated with the district actually have a lot of agency to do things and say things in a constructive way that the folks who are working in the district do not. And I'll leave it at that. I know I don't take a lot of time, but I'll turn it back over to the facilitators.
Thank you so much, Professor Valle, for your contribution and helping facilitate the Native voices.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Back to you, Mr. Soto.
Well, I think looking at the time, it's already 7:30. I think there's obviously there's a lot of work ahead of us. I think there's also at the same time there's a strong group, strong as far as involvement, as far as many of us would like to nurture and create this program and submit it before obviously the grant deadline and also into what next year looks like. I would, in this case, I'll let Jessica close it, and then in case somebody wants to acknowledge or have a closing prayer, I think that should be it. And then hope to see many of you in the next couple of meetings we'll have as we work together.
Thank you, Heriberto. I want to, real quick, before I move into any closing, I wanted to double check that there was a question about the posters, and I think it was asking if that was recent, being merchandised at Costco. Was that recent, Vanessa?
Yeah. Oh, I would say about a year ago. So not too like, actually, I don't know. The pandemic messed me up. Maybe it was 2 years ago. Yeah, it was about 2 years ago.
That was my question. I think when I saw the poster he put up, I thought, oh, that's probably a teacher that's had that poster for like 20 years. But then thinking like that was just sold like a year or two ago at Costco was wild.
Yeah, no, super racist.
Question, Christina. Go ahead.
When did you see it? When did you see it in your student or your son's classroom?
That was probably about maybe almost close to 3 years ago. Pandemic is 1 year, then 1 year before that, we started junior high. So.
All right, so, you know, I want to really, in closure, I want to express the importance and the need for our next steps with recruitment for our Indian Parent Committee. Per the part 2 of the guide of the grant, which Tiffany mentioned. So we definitely are going to be taking some heavier action on doing some recruiting and hopefully garnering some more interest. So that'll be coming. And then just to emphasize, that we are dedicated to completing the components of the part 2 of the grant. And so we can look at that funding source, as well as the other ideas about the larger framework too that Professor Valle shared, because I think that this is so exciting and really necessary in order, I believe, to serve our undocumented Native students potentially, or however that may look. But that would be a goal for me. I mean, for me, like a larger goal is potentially one day to be able to service undocumented Native students in addition to our blood documented Native students. So, we're dedicated, our team is dedicated to that part of the, completing the part of the grant. But again, it takes the parent committee. So if I start texting you guys and I start reaching out or one of us, or maybe all of us, we start to reach out and build, connection with you, please know that we're trying to continue the development of the Indian parent community. And let's see, what am I forgetting, Tiffany?
I think that's it.
Am I good? Okay, just want to make sure.
We're good to go.
Okay.
Yeah, just connecting our families with each other is the biggest thing. So they can really come up with a game plan to meet the times and the days. We really want it to be organic with our families.
And Christina, you may be able to chime in. Was it Davis or Washington Indian Ed meeting that we were just at that they got theirs started? Their district funded those like non-native or non-documented Native students in the household or that kind of stuff to match the funding.
I'm not sure. I feel like I heard that somewhere, but I'm not sure. I can't say, sorry.
Kind of sounds Elk Grove-ish to me.
Can I just chime in on that note really quickly?
It's Elk Grove. We do that.
One of the things that's stunning to me, and I told this to our parent committee, is that up until this last year, when we got funding through Title VI, Davis Joint Unified in all its years had never, ever allocated money to support Native students. Nothing, ever. And that was stunning to me, that for the first time ever. So you need to hold them accountable for the students they already have to support who've never been supported.
Thank you for reiterating that and emphasizing it, Jesus. I think that's critically important. Let's see. Is there any last minute questions or final thoughts? And is there anyone that would be willing to volunteer to do a closing prayer?
I just wanted to say thank you, Professor Valle, for coming in and, you know, it's really encouraging to hear, you know, and see the work you've been doing. And I know we're positioned in a really good way of being kind of sandwiched between, you know, we have Elk Grove with Josh, and then we have, you know, Jesus from Davis and people in Elk Grove and Christina Perry Chicken and so many, you know, so much experience here that, you know, I really feel confident of building something extremely strong. And not having to fumble around doing a lot of the, you know, beginning things because people have already done that work, you know, so really taking on their lead or learning from their lead. And, you know, just something real fast, as Professor Valle said too, you know, I have privilege in the way that I have a degree. And so I have weight in that way. And so when you all need me, text me. Like, I don't mind going bad on people. So, or if you need some help with, Tiffany, if you're like, I can't find research to help with this grant, like I can shoot you some things like, you know, pretty fast. So, you know, y'all can use me. I'm here for my community. So yeah,
I've name dropped you before because I know you are ready. So thank you for that. And I appreciate all your advocacy. I'm in awe of you. So thank you for volunteering for that.
Oh, anytime, y'all. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Are there any volunteers to do a closing prayer? Would love to hear from someone. Jolie? Maybe one in your language, in your tribal language?
I am so appreciative of the offer. I personally was not comfortable with that, but I appreciate you asking me. I do thank everybody. I said this in our breakout room for sharing your time and your space with me tonight and your thoughts, and for all the contributions that everybody's already doing within their family, within their local community, because it does impact our community at large. And I am thankful for each of you. And that's as close as the prayers you're gonna get from me.
No problem. That's perfect. And thank you for being honest back with me. I appreciate it. I just put you on the spot, but it's so beautiful to listen to you speak. So I was just being selfish.
I'll volunteer Joshua Hoagland.
Wife spoke.
Yeah, I'm volunteering him. He likes to volunteer me for stuff.
All right, I'll close it. You ready to close it up?
We are. I think we are.
Okay. Grandfather Creator, I pray that you watch over us as we take our own journeys into our communities tomorrow and throughout the week. I pray that each step is guided by the ones who walk this earth before us. I pray that we have the courage and strength to stand up and do what is right for our children at all times, at all costs. I pray that we help each other out and lead the way. All my relations, a hope.
Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you, Josh. Thank you so much. It was great to have you all meet tonight with us. And thank you again to Professor Valle for your valuable contribution and getting, you know, our discussion going and helping to build trust. And thank you all. I look forward to meeting with you again. And we'll work on getting dates out and some planning information out to you about our next steps. So.
Bye.
Thank you.
Good night, everyone. Thank you.